Good morning.
Morning.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you to Lori, Kellen, and the AOT team for kind of setting everything up for us. Thank you in advance to the panelists. And thank you again for coming today. So why are we here today? We're here today to talk about cybersecurity. I pulled a stat last night in preparing. Over the next 5 years, we are expected to see a 15% increase in cybercrime, with costs reaching $10.5 trillion by 2025. That's a big number. As you may know, I'm Darian with Southern Bank. What I kind of see on my day-to-day are two main things when it comes to cybersecurity and cybercrime. One being email wire fraud. So we have clients that will receive an email that'll be from that company owner, apparently, but it's really not. And it says, hey, can you wire these millions of funds by the end of the day, the meetings all day, take it to the bank and take care of it. So that's one thing that we see quite a bit, and it's easy to fall for. Another thing that we see is ransomware. So folks will get their system hacked and they'll lock down their internal systems, and again request money before they release those systems. So I'll do a brief introduction of our panelists real quick, and what I'll do is ask each of you to kind of go in a little more detail what you see in your day-to-day as well as I introduce each of you. Okay, so I'm going to start with Michael Nussbaum. Michael is the Vice President of Nussbaum Insurance. He helps clients with both their personal and business insurance needs. He specializes in making the insurance product more tangible for his clients and helping to protect their dreams. So, Michael?
Thank you all for coming out today. Great to see everyone here. Hopefully we've got a number of people tuning in online as well. Microphone might help here in case there are people online and people can't hear me. So cybersecurity or cyber insurance became a, prevalent topic probably 10, 15 years ago in our industry, and now it's a matter of time, matter of if not when your business is going to be have an incident of cybercrime. Everyone thinks the big, larger Fortune 500 companies are the biggest target, but unfortunately it's the smaller businesses, the mom and pop organizations that may not have the heavy infrastructure in place and the proper protocols in place to help prevent or stave off a cyber attack. So in the insurance industry, we're working with them to get the proper protocols in place, work with their IT and cybersecurity partners, and then make sure you've got the proper policy on the back end to help reimburse you and provide a little more security if you are a victim of a hack.
All right, thank you, Michael. Next, we have Mark Norris, who is the president of Solutrix LLC, providing IT support, fractional CTO services, co-location, app development, and he also was a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. Mark?
Well, we've certainly seen things change over the past few years. 10, 15 years ago, we almost had no issues with cybersecurity. But I think it was about 12 years ago, we had our first client that had ransomware. And someone in their marketing department opened something they shouldn't. And about 5 minutes later, thankfully, they recognized it and grabbed one of our guys, and they just literally pulled the plug on the machine out of the wall. But before that was done, there were about 457,000 files that had been encrypted. And think about it, all of a sudden, and whatever percentage that is of your business, you'll never be able to see again unless you pay someone, somewhere, a lot of money, and then there's still no guarantee. Fortunately, we have been doing some remote backup for them. So had to rebuild that machine, and it took about a week to get all the files back in place. But they really didn't miss their business. The piece that was really critical is we were so thankful, and they were too, that this was not someone in accounting who had opened the wrong piece of email, because that would have, no payroll until it's fixed, can't pay or receive funds. It can be pretty devastating. And it used to be that the big guys were the targets, but as Michael pointed out, now that it used to be physical hackers doing this. Now what the hackers do is they create the bots, and the bots go out, and they don't care what size you are. They just go out and hit what's ever available and whatever they can get through.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next we have Greg, who is the CEO of Norfolk-based Valor Cybersecurity. Greg and his team advise business executives in defense, technology, and investment communities to simplify and address cybersecurity threats and business requirements. Greg is also a former professional baseball player, and he takes these values that he's learned to help his executives protect what they value most. Greg?
Yeah, I think pleasure to be here first and foremost. Darian, thanks so much. A couple things brought me to cybersecurity that I think is relevant to all of us. I was running a small business at one time that had a cyber attack early on in my career. I was actually a part of the draft class into Major League Baseball that had their first cyber attack, or what we call insider threat, where somebody from the organization took information outside of it and gave it to another team. So they had all of their competitive data, and they were able to play better against that specific team. So we have that in our businesses today, where your information can be leaked and it gives somebody a competitive advantage over you. Really, this is something, we're all operating in a digital world nowadays. We're connected to the internet, and there's risks associated with it that we have to recognize, just like walking outside, and making sure you lock your car, lock your household. We need to do that same thing when it comes to technology. So looking forward to diving into some of those subjects, but as an organization, Valor Cybersecurity, we see this happening across our community, and it's something that is threatening businesses, but we often don't hear about it because it's not something that people want to flaunt, that they've been a part of a cyber attack. So it's happening, really to businesses around you. We may not be hearing about it, which gives folks like ourselves a false sense of security. So we want to kind of just flag that, educate folks, and make sure they have the right tools and strategies in place in order to kind of make sure they're not a part of that statistic that continues to grow that Darian mentioned.
Thank you. So next we're going to have a brief video, kind of icebreaker.
We've been hearing a lot about cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is, we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. The most popular password in the United States is password 123, and as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on the Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password, and this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon,
And what's his name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where did you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. And you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 4, 6, 8, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's You know, it's, for me, it's strong enough.
Higher exit, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so like,
What's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, right here my password.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is
So yeah, it seems like it could be that easy. So next we'll kind of go into our panel discussion. And to kind of follow up from that video, for the whole group, anything that kind of comes to mind as common mistakes that you see in the field from your clients?
Yeah, just one of the things off the back end of that is, 85% of cyber attacks happen through social engineering. So that could be someone calling you, someone sending you an email. It's commonly through email because we're in such a fast-paced environment that emails sometimes just, we get on autopilot and just open things, click things, get things paid. So it really becomes, they're trying to wire our brains to be, just do this now. So Mark and I were talking before, and here's your $200 payment, collect now, and we're used to seeing that kind of fast-paced payment transactions. You click it, now they have access to your whole computer. So that's kind of the dark side of it. I think a lot of times they're starting to use calling in on the phone and trying to sound like somebody that you know, and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, friend, hey, I need some help here. Can you transfer me some money? And then you transfer it just because they're trying to pull your heartstrings, and then you realize it didn't go to your friend when you try to call them and say, hey, is everything all right? And you're like, what are you talking about? So they're trying to go after human instinct, and they're getting really creative about it because they are businesses themselves. These are criminal groups. We've investigated them time and time out. They are businesses oftentimes bigger than the companies that we're operating. They have call centers, they have business development people, they have accounting, they have all the departments that we're used to that are going after businesses like ours in order to make money. And they have the same amount of competition that we have in our own businesses.
Yeah, the one I'm getting most recently right now, I used to get invoices, and they want me to then pay this, and it's generally a small enough amount that it doesn't ring too many bells, but it's bogus. But most recently, I'm getting things from PayPal, which I do use a little bit in our company, and it's my payment. And who doesn't want to get paid? I mean, if someone's going to hand you, or your client's going to pay you, of course you want to do it. Well, it took some investigation, and we sent it on back to PayPal. They take you to a site to collect your payment that looks identical to a PayPal site, except it's not. They're looking for you to then enter in your username and password, and bingo, they've got access to all your funds. Got to be really diligent, and very tough to do that. But that's kind of the biggest thing we're seeing is people responding to email that you really wish they would think a little bit better about.
Yeah, thankfully, insurance, both for cyber and other items, does usually protect against stupidity or accidents. That's why you have it in the first place. So, a lot of our carriers are pushing to have employees fall back on their training. Work with your IT providers to provide continual training. I know when I worked for a larger life science company in a career before the insurance world, we'd get quarterly or monthly emails saying, if you click the wrong link, you automatically won yourself 3 free hours of IT security training. Or if you deleted the email like you were supposed to, you got an automatic response from our IT department saying, congratulations, that was the correct move. So it's, little things like that, constantly reminding your employees to be aware, be diligent as possible. We were talking beforehand about, hey, we're changing bank partners, send our payment here, or send so-and-so's payroll information here. If you get an email like that, follow up with a phone call. Take the extra step to further ensure, with an E, your cybersecurity.
Great, thank you. Michael, we'll stay with you. I would assume a common question you get in your industry is, how much cyber insurance coverage do I need? Help us answer that if you don't mind.
The short answer is it depends on what kind of business you are. Thankfully, a lot of our carriers are starting to include a kind of smaller sublimit for what we call a BOB or business owners package, kind of starting out maybe around the $100,000 or $250,000 limit. But our standalone policies typically run about $1 million and beyond that. If you're a government contractor in the Hampton Roads area, the federal government's requiring you to have specific limits. In most cases, it's $5 million of cyber coverage. In some cases, we've seen up to $20 and $25 million requirements for cyber insurance. It all kind of just depends on what your revenues are, size of the project, and again, what your overall risk is and how many, individual clients and personal identifying information that you have. Stats a couple years old now that I saw was you've got to monitor your client's data after you've suffered a breach. It was about $220 a day for non-medical businesses. If you're in the medical field, it jumps up to about $380 a day per client based on that, I think, 8-month monitoring requirement.
Perfect. So that's a great segue into the next question. So, Greg, I'll ask this to you. Compliance versus security. So, in some sectors, you have to be compliant based on certain rules. Do you get the question, if I'm compliant, does that mean I'm secure?
Yeah, I think one of the things we all still need to recognize is cybersecurity is still very early on in its maturity state as a service. As Michael said, oftentimes people don't think about the insurance until after something bad happens. We've had multiple clients recently who had 300,000 plus cyber incidents in the damages, and they've only been reimbursed maybe 20,000. So it just shows that the quality and the thoroughness of your insurance agent is critical to be able to tailor it to the business that you're operating in. And if you're just getting a template policy, oftentimes you find out on the back end when something bad happens. So something to keep in mind there. From a compliance standpoint, there are a lot of regulations that are coming up in today's world from the federal government or local and state. And these are really minimum requirements to operate. So this is more of a check these boxes and you're good to do business with us, which is it's just the minimum requirement. It's not really actually going to protect your business in the specific areas that your business needs. So you have to kind of tailor compliance to what you're trying to accomplish from a protection standpoint. Oftentimes it's money, it's people, and it's data and intellectual property that your company values. So those are really 3 important things to take into account. Compliance is something to aspire for, but you want to focus on protection first, and you're protecting money, which that's what compliance is doing. It's making sure you don't get fined, making sure that the regulatory agencies don't come down on you in a negative light. So we continue to beat that drum. When we come across business owners that really want to protect their business, we can protect their business and make them compliant at the same time with the same dollar. So it's, a lot of these things are happening together, but it's really important to focus on business and people protection, not just being compliant with some type of check the box type exercise.
Great, thank you. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about IT managed services providers and how that works in cybersecurity?
Glad to. Managed services, we should be able, your contractor, us, whomever, should be able to monitor your network so that they can see who should be on it and those people that shouldn't be on it. You wouldn't think about buying a house that didn't have doors that you could lock. You ought to have a network and your Wi-Fi and everything else that is just as secure. It doesn't stop someone from taking a car and driving through the front wall, but you don't want someone to be able to sit out in the parking lot and be able to come into your business without you knowing it. Back to being certified, being compliant, or being safe on it. We can put everything in place to make the network as safe as all known criteria today. But every time you add a new device, and that's new operating system, that may have a vulnerability to it. So this is a continually changing and updating situation with your network. I think it's a good dialogue to have and periodic checks with your managed service provider.
Great, thank you. So the next question will be for the full group. Anything that you're hearing from your clients or just in the community that just doesn't add up? Kind of the myth versus reality question. Anything that pops in your mind with that?
Yeah, I'd just add that a lot of business owners want the easy button. I think we all want to find something that's easy and less pain to do. At the end of the day, you have to have multiple people at the table having this conversation. There's 3 parties here that everybody should have at the table to some extent, including a lawyer as well, just to kind of think about the legalities of it all. But it takes a team, just like anything does. I saw that in my baseball days, but see it today in business. It takes multiple experts to really customize a strategy for your business or your personal life. A lot of people nowadays will come from the executive standpoint and ask a company like us, can you look at my personal identity as a business and find ways to protect it? So that's where things are headed. That's where people are trying to put their money when it comes to cybersecurity, because they felt the pain. So our mission as a company and our mission here on the panel is to educate people so that they can take informed action to save money and time on the back end of all this.
I can add to that, the networks are so complex today that no one person can manage it totally. He needs to have the resource, the people behind him. It's kind of like you can't have just one professor for a college. You need to have someone who understands the math, someone who understands the science, and then someone who understands the humanities so that he can cover the range. Same thing with your network. There are easy pieces to it, but there's a lot of nuance as well. And again, you need to have someone who has the depth to be able to manage that.
Yeah, if you're looking at it from a property insurance comparisons to, comparing it to cyber insurance, as your insurance agent, you don't want me going out and rebuilding your home after a loss. You want to have, a true contractor do that. So just how we'll work with you to protect your business. You want to work with the, managed services IT team to help ensure that the proper protocols are in place. The biggest thing I hear right now that's myth is, oh, I'm a small business, I don't need this, or I'm just operating myself, and I'm a sole proprietor doing consultant work. You still have personal identifiable information from your business, from your clients, that can be compromised. You need to take steps to protect yourself.
All right. Any best practices or just general recommendations you have for your clients?
Yeah, I can mention a couple. I think it all starts with mindset. I'm big on that aspect where we all have to kind of educate ourselves and have the right mindset going into it. A lot of people still have that it's not going to happen to me until it does, and then I'm sitting around a table with folks who are almost crying because their business is falling apart, which is definitely soul crushing. But it starts with just kind of educating yourself, knowing what you value. We all kind of value different things, whether it's people, our cars, which are now connected to the internet, our phones, our bank accounts. So just making sure you prioritize what you value, find ways to protect it. All the information's out there. Most of the time what we do is really tailor it to your specific situation, and that's why people pay us at the end of the day. So I think that's definitely the place to start. That's kind of the assessment phase as we see, making sure you're tailoring it to your business. You're training the folks around you on what you value, so that if they get a call from you and say, I need a gift card or something of that nature, they know that that's not something you would do. So you're making them aware of how you look at all this stuff and what you're looking to protect. And it's a continual process. People have to, our businesses are changing, our digital footprint is constantly changing. So we have to find a way to continue to update that. We have a free assessment on our website, ismysitesafe.com. So you can always go do that. It kind of gives you a little bit more awareness that's specific to you. But as far as best practices, multi-factor is really one of those areas that everybody should have in place against any of those accounts that they value most. That's definitely one of them. And then make sure you call the people that you're banking with, just to kind of have a conversation on how they're protecting what you value from that standpoint. A lot of times security is becoming a competitive advantage. So if you guys have clients, if you're serving people and you talk about how you're protecting what they're giving you, it's going to maybe allow you to expand the contract, or you're going after a new customer and you start to talk about how you're protecting the information for your existing clients. That gives them more peace of mind, which I think we all value peace of mind at the end of the day. So just some things to consider. We have all kinds of things on our website that kind of list out best practices, but it's got to be specific to you at the end of the day.
I think one of the most important things is to have your network audited and then have a conversation afterwards so that you can understand what the vulnerabilities are. And the world's getting more complex and more digital. My wife just purchased a Mustang Mach-E, which is an electric vehicle. And we don't need key fobs. It uses your cell phone to be able to start the car and navigate, and you can talk to it. And that's great until I got to the end of the driveway with just my cell phone in the car, and it told me I had no key. And I go, well, what do I do next? So I could walk back to the house, which was not 300 feet behind me, but I said, well, I'm going to see if I can do this because I'm an IT guy. I can just make it work. And I ended up calling tech support. And I'm sitting there going, wait, I am calling an IT tech support for my car. And I'm going, this is interesting. So about 30 minutes later, they said, well, you'll need to reboot your car. And I'm going, how about my phone? They said, well, we'll have to escalate that. And they did do a good job of verifying that I was the owner of the car, as opposed to just someone who got in the car. Amazed me. I'm on the phone for about 35 minutes. And they were able to fix it so I could drive away without my key fob. When the world is becoming more integrated all the time, just think about the cybersecurity if you're driving a vehicle down the road that someone can hack into. So you need to be auditing.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier, but having a plan, not just pre-breach, but post-breach. Pre-breach, work with your insurance carrier, work with your IT team to set protocols in place. Most carriers are requiring, like Greg mentioned, multi-factor authentication. We want to see certain firewall parameters in place, but then have a plan post-breach. Some of the younger people online or here may not know what a phone tree is, but activate your old school phone tree of who do I call, what steps do we immediately take, what's our action plan the second you notice there's a breach. So that way you can get back up and running as quickly as possible and practice that plan. That way you're not in the, when fight or flight mode kicks in, you know exactly how to react and who to reach out to.
So I think everybody kind of mentioned things are changing pretty quickly, and these threats are becoming more prevalent and always changing as well. To that point, anything that you kind of see in the next couple of years that'll be more pressing for your clients?
I think the advent of AI at the retail or individual personal level, it just opens up a whole new can of worms. Because today, if someone has taken 3 or 4 pictures of your face and they've recorded 10 words that you said, the AI people can make you say anything they want. And it's going to look and sound just like you. That's kind of disturbing because you can now get a phone call from your boss you're looking at him and he's telling you what he wants you to do, and you're going to probably do it. Unless he happens to be in the room right next to you and you're looking at him at the same time. So AI coming mainstream is going to change the way we do a whole lot of things.
Yeah, the big AI is definitely a big aspect in the insurance world right now. The other one that we've heard some rumors and rumblings about is finding new ways to address state-sponsored cyber attacks. So, from the countries who are enemies of the United States, and try to target our businesses and our infrastructure, to hurt our individuals, hurt our economy. You know, insurance carriers are looking at new and different ways to either carve that out of certain policies, possibly even exclude it, or develop new, new policies to address that, because it is something that's happening more and more, frequently in our world.
Yeah, a couple things on the cars. If you have a car past 2017, there's about 30 computers in it, and they're expecting that to multiply by 10 every 10 years. So they're continuing to put more and more computers in your cars, which that's a risk if you're driving down the road and somebody takes advantage of your car and steers it off the road. So I think that's definitely one of them. Crime continues to pay. So a lot of these, as Michael mentioned, people have been predicting World War III coming up, next 5-10 years. Obviously, this area would be heavily impacted because they're going to go after our foundational items first, which is our small business, the medium-sized companies that support the economy. And if they can take that down, that puts a hindrance on some of the military bases around here. So we're seeing a lot of those conversations take place and a lot of the preparations take place for something of that nature. But war is fought in person, but it's also fought from a cyber warfare standpoint. So we got to continue to recognize that we're all digitally connected. A country's not necessarily going to start by going after us with some type of bomb or some type of physical attack. They're going to start by doing their intelligence from a cyber standpoint. And I think we all have a piece to play, living in this area, contributing to that economy on the defense side. Just want to reiterate that these crime groups are businesses just like us. I think that's one of those things that's important to kind of notice. It's not somebody in their basement that is executing these attacks, so it's very coordinated. They're making a lot of money by it, which helps them bolster up their ability to execute it. So just some things to keep in mind, but ask some questions to folks like us if you have curiosities. We're here to help. There's no hourly rate to ask questions. We'd love to find a way to help you in some way, whether it's just education or finding a way for you to better serve your clients.
Thank you. So that's a great segue to ask a few questions to the group. Anybody have any questions for our panelists today?
Don't all speak at once.
So you guys have talked about, being prepared and from an insurance standpoint, or, whether it's having strong passwords or something, but if that attack does happen and you're not prepared, what are the next steps? Like, who do you call? What's the next thing to do there? Or are you just out of luck?
I think most of the time, if you haven't thought about it, it's the SOL. You kind of click the panic button. A lot of people call the local police department. They have a huge backlog, so oftentimes they're like, oh, that's just another person. We've been on the news a couple times as a company, and we'll get calls from people, multiple calls a few days after, and say, hey, I've been cyber stalked for 10 years. They've taken my money, they've taken the title of my house, things of that nature. So it just shows that law enforcement may not be the first person to call. I think people are starting to get personal cyber insurance policies. So these things are starting to become normalized. You can call a company like us, we'll try to help you the best we can. It's not really our specialty. But we're seeing companies come out that are specific to individuals because it's a more complex situation. Most of the time, these things aren't drawn out on what your life looks like from a digital standpoint or a network architecture. Another key point is the third parties. So we're all starting to depend on these vendors, these applications on our phone to do everything. From a business, you can think about it like QuickBooks or some of the systems you're using to operate your business. But from a personal standpoint, that landscape is continuing to expand. So when something bad happens, like somebody getting to your bank account, how do you know where it came from? It could come from your accounting software. You're using Mint on your phone, and it comes through there. So just kind of understanding what you mainly depend on to live your daily life from a digital standpoint, I think is critical. The FBI always puts their number out there. There's a local Norfolk FBI office that you can call. But these folks are focused on white-collar crime. So if they don't see a commonality with the type of crime that's taken place and you just lost a little bit of money, if it's been 48 hours, you're probably not going to get that money back unless you have some type of insurance policy that's going to reimburse you. So these things are getting buried under the rug, even for small businesses. They're definitely on the individual side, but small businesses have it happen. If they don't have cyber insurance, it's just kind of like we just continue business as normal, but we just lost 250 grand, walked out the door, and we just got to try to prepare for that to not happen again. So great question.
First thing I would do is, if it's your business, call your IT company, let them know, and then have them tell you what damage that they've seen. And then on a personal one, and for a business, I would change every password. Anything that has any personal information or money associated with it, make sure don't follow links that came to you. Go to those sites directly, make the changes.
Yeah, just recently I had a client who had actually been trying to get to buy a cyber policy for the past couple of years. He said it wasn't big enough, I don't need it. Well, his personal and business Facebook page were hacked, and whoever did it ended up charging about $1,000 on his Facebook business account in ads for different things. He ended up having to hire a company out in California that specializes in Facebook recovery and getting an actual human being from Meta's headquarters to work with and get that account unlocked for him. So not only did he have the expense of the money being taken out of his account and being charged there, but the external expense of hiring another party to get involved and help navigate that channel. So, like Greg said, you are a little SOL. There are some resources out there, but again, part of us trying to do these panels is educate everyone as possible and make sure you're as prepared as possible.
Any other questions?
All right. I want to go out on a limb. Excuse me. And being fully transparent, so I don't want you to be concerned about hurting my feelings. Okay? The company I work for offers an identity theft program. Okay? Most of the information, obviously, that I get is from them. I always like to find out from other professionals what they think of identity theft programs. And I know it runs a gamut. You can have some that ain't worth the paper's written on, and some that are very good. So what is your take on identity theft programs for individuals? Don't worry about my feelings. I want to know the truth.
I'd probably say it depends on which one it is. How many questions they ask you from the start is going to be a key indicator. How much they want to know about you in order to monitor, and that's what an identity theft program does, is it monitors it, so if something does happen, you can take action quicker than you normally would. Most of the time, I used to investigate incidents, that's all I used to do all day. A lot of the big companies, when they leak your data, and these big headline type cyber attacks happen, all they do is send you something in the mail and say you get a year of identity theft protection. What that's done is it's watered down these identity theft protection programs because they're not making as much money as they desired to when they started the company. So it causes them to lower their service quality. So I would always vet these based off of how many questions they're asking, and if you feel like they're being thorough enough when you first enter into their system. They should know who you bank with. They should know what you value. If they're not asking that stuff, they're basically just putting something on your name and your social security number to say if this comes up on the regular web, not necessarily the dark web. Some of these companies don't use the dark web, which is where a lot of this bad activity happens and where it's exchanged and bought and sold. So make sure they understand kind of what you value. Obviously, they're going to need your social and your name, which that's another potential threat, because these cyber attack type organizations are going after these credit monitoring type companies as well. We've seen multiple of them breached along the way, so your information is now, that you entrusted to somebody, is now fully out there. So it's a little bit of the wild, wild west, but I do still support credit monitoring like LifeLock and services of that nature, because it allows you to take better action when something bad does happen. But every business is not created equal, so I'd say not to hurt your feelings, but they're not as effective as they sell them to be. You kind of have to do your due diligence to understand how in depth they're going for your benefit.
Okay, so far my ego is intact.
As we say in our industry quite frequently, read your coverage forms. You know, read what the, you know, whatever provider you're using, what they're actually delivering, you know, what the services they're delivering are. You know, are they proactive, are they reactive, are they both? You know, there are homeowners carriers that do offer identity theft solutions as part of that policy. Some of them are both the proactive and reactive. Others are kind of like Greg was saying, you know, oh, hey, someone stole your identity. Yeah, we'll monitor for 6 months to a year for you. You know, there's certainly benefits to having those solutions in the marketplace, especially as these cyber threats become more robust and more frequent. And with people working from home, a lot of times their home IT infrastructures aren't as strong as their work infrastructures would be. So it does open up a large risk exposure. So I think there's a, you know, valid marketplace for those types of solutions and companies.
Still good.
So, Michael, you mentioned work from home. How has that affected cybersecurity from your all standpoints?
Most people don't have an IT department in their house, you know, looking at their router, their Wi-Fi password. You know, as we saw in that video, people's Wi-Fi passwords are probably the same thing as they use for every other password. So, you know, if a bad actor were able to penetrate your home network, they could get access to any other information, especially safe passwords on your computer. So it opens up a whole slew of issues. And unfortunately, I think, you know, from the insurance world, we're a little lagging behind that exposed risk and you know, having a true solution to it right now.
And from a managed service provider, we're concerned because now all of a sudden, it's not just the network in the building, but it could be the network in the building and 20 people working remotely. So we want to make certain that that was a secure connection. And then the next question is that PC they're working on part of the business, or is it personal? And again, it just expanded and opened up one more avenue for someone to attack.
Yeah, the business lines are blurring. It used to be you go to an office, you work from the office, and you don't take anything home. Maybe you take some paperwork home, you know, but things were more controlled. The lines are completely blurred now. We've been hired by multiple companies to buy or set up, you know, types of equipment in the house where the company now has the router, and that's, you know, that's a little bit intrusive in our opinion when it comes to, you know, if you're gaming or you have kids or you have friends that are, you know, on your network that is sponsored by the company. You know, the company may be monitoring all of that. So do you want them to, you know, see that traffic that you're, you know, logging into your bank account and doing personal activities or gaming, things of that nature? So the lines are blurring. You know, companies are trying to find a way to navigate it, but there's no perfect solution. So it's really asking, you know, as a business person, you know, asking your IT provider, asking the experts kind of, you know, what should I do from a home standpoint? A lot of companies are just kind of accepting the risk without even recognizing it, that, you know, people are now working from home full time. They have a company asset which has proprietary information on it, but there's a connection back to the home, which is Cox Communications, and we know that security is not always baked in by design when it comes to an internet service provider like that. So, you know, just kind of thinking about your own situation, you know, taking a calculated risk as opposed to just kind of turning a blind eye to it is what we always say at the end of the day. And you know, work from home just creates another kind of wrench for the business owner to try to not look at, or if they do look at it, it makes things a lot more complicated. So we'll continue to see that kind of be a complicated situation to address, but I know folks like Mark and the team are kind of thinking through that and how people can address it going forward.
Great, thank you. So besides work from home, a couple other buzzwords in the last couple of years are ChatGPT and cryptocurrency. So from a small business cybersecurity standpoint, do you all see those as opportunities or threats?
Or just plain fun?
That's it.
I think plain fun, but that's just me. I always like to approach things as a business opportunity first, and you try to, you know, think about the protections around it. You know, we all want to exploit opportunities, but other people are trying to look at the opportunities that you're exploiting and try to exploit them as threats. So ChatGPT is a huge business opportunity for anybody or personal to be able to expedite how fast we do things and put information that's out on the internet that we commonly had to do research on and bring it right, to us in a translated way. Cryptocurrency is another thing that the federal government is trying to find a way to make that more of the economy where we just have a card, we don't have cash that we're exchanging. Obviously that gives them a little bit more control over how we spend money, which is kind of another thing. And we could argue about that all day or discuss it in a way, but those things are being leveraged by criminal groups. Cryptocurrency was, I think, 85% of the requests that commonly come from a post-attack actor. So what they would go to these big companies like the Caterpillars and take a department down and say we want 100,000 in cryptocurrency because it was kind of relatively untraceable at the time. The FBI has gotten a little bit better about cryptocurrency, but obviously AI makes it where they can execute an attack from not in their office. So it kind of creates that there's a bot that's attacking it. They can't take the bot to court. They try to find the person behind it, but people can hide behind the dark magical cloak that we're all used to from the Harry Potters and things, where the internet makes it that much easier to execute an attack on any of us and not show your face. So that's kind of where things get scary. But definitely, I always see the opportunity first, and then as you're going through the opportunity to execute it, look at the potential threats that could take that opportunity down.
And I've been doing cryptocurrency mining for about 3 or 4 years. And I can tell you 3 or 4 years ago, it was a great story. And I used to love talking about it. And right now, I'd rather not. The opportunity has gone from really significant to absolutely minuscule. But one thing I can add is initially there was a lot of hype saying this is the bad guys doing it because it was untraceable. Well, the blockchain, which is what it's all based on, is a ledger, and it's a ledger forever. So they can trace anything that they want to back to whoever started it and who paid for it. The issue is it's expensive to do that. So are they going to do it for a $10,000 payment? Probably not. You start to see a bunch of people doing it, they're going to probably put the resource to it to find them.
I haven't seen a whole lot of cryptocurrency issues in the insurance world, other than maybe some, wire transfer fraud issues of people changing bank accounts. The trade magazines are starting to report for people using ChatGPT that also may hold a professional liability exposure. If you're using that to fill out forms or provide data to your clients and customers, that has not been worked out on a coverage form yet from a professional liability, but it's something that the carriers are quickly looking to address, possibly even exclude or charge as an add-on there, because it does open up an exposure that has not previously been addressed.
Any other questions from the group?
I have a question. In this day and age, we can buy a house by filling out an application on the computer. You can get a job by doing that as well. And you have to give them your information, your socials, and all that. How do we know that these platforms are secure as a, just a consumer who's having this exchange?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that third party aspect. You in order to do business with somebody, just like you would in a friendship, you're going to ask them questions about, what they think about the world, how they like to live. That's how we relate to people in our personal lives. We have to take that into business and ask them, how are they going to protect what you give them? A lot of that comes from the way that they're aligning with compliance requirements. Commonly, real estate agencies, these systems are regulated to some capacity. So just asking them, what security do you have in place? And if they go silent, that's probably an indication that you should look to another vendor. It's becoming a competitive advantage in the banking industry and some of the more sensitive industries where most companies are now putting it within their proposals. We protect your information in this way. So make sure to look out for things like that. Everything is somewhat vulnerable, and because of the changes that are always taking place. But if a company has it top of mind that we're going after opportunities, we want to serve you with this great software, and we understand the value of security, and here's how we go about doing it within our culture, within making sure we're testing and updating our security periodically. That's probably a good sign to look for, just as a minimum standard when you're going out and looking for a system. And you'll commonly see nowadays, banners on these, QuickBooks or these common websites, NetSuite. They'll actually have, here's our security update report. So a lot of these companies are coming out with reports to kind of prove that to their customers, and that's going to become something that I think is a minimum standard of doing business. And for companies that aren't doing that, they're probably not going to be in business the next 5-10 years from our standpoint.
Trust your gut instinct a little bit too. We've all had human interactions where we're like, this person seems like a liability. I kind of need to distance myself from them. Scan through the website, see if you feel comfortable using it, and look at the web address too. We all know the standard www.something.org.com.gov, but if it's www.6 one word and then 6 periods, and it looks funky, trust your instinct and go somewhere else.
So just because it has that lock doesn't mean it's, do you know what I'm talking about? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, the lock just means that that site is secure. It has nothing to say that that site's who they say they are. So, and I do some business with a number of banks. I got it with inquiry. They wanted some information. They said I needed to log in. So I clicked on the link, and I'm looking at it, and it has the name of the bank, business.com. Well, that's not the bank, but it sure looks like, because they use their name. So I forwarded that information onto the bank and their security people. It disappeared about a month later, but, and it, they had their bank's logo and everything else on it, so you felt secure, but had I not looked at the top URL, I might have.
Yeah, if you don't look at that, that tells you a lot.
You can hover over it, right, and it'll show you.
Yeah.
What about Venmo and that type of thing? A lot of places are using that for payment, a lot of business, small businesses. Not secure.
Yeah, it's similar to like QR codes.
Yeah.
QR codes are great, but if the wrong person, is behind that, oftentimes Venmo, people will send you a request with the same profile picture as your friend, and maybe they change a number on the back end to say, I know your rent is coming at the 30th, I'm going to send a request, and just put like a 4 after the name, and most people don't recognize because they're so used to making that transaction. So make sure for systems like that you have multi-factor on it, and then there's controls you can put in place to say, I will only send money to these people, and you can kind of check off which ones those are, so that it'll remember which people you've sent money to in the past, so that any anomalies will just be more recognizable from that standpoint.
And I would think you have very little recourse if you use Venmo, because there's no one to call. It's not like a Visa or MasterCard where you can go to the bank and say, this was not legitimate.
Any other questions? All right. Any last minute comments from the panelists?
Just do your network audit and talk to your IT people.
Yeah, they say your network is your net worth, and we want to be a part of your network and answer any questions you may have. That's why we exist as companies, and ultimately want to help this community that we do business within be more secure, so that we can do more business, bring more opportunities, leave us all better at the end of the day.
And thank you everyone for coming out and trying to educate yourselves, and we want to be here to educate everyone and be your partners and compassionate leaders and making sure you're as protected as possible. We literally think about this stuff in our sleep. I had a dream last week about someone hacking the NIL portal and what that would look like and for a cybercrime thing. So literally thinking about it in our sleep sometimes, but you know, we want to help educate you as best as possible and, you know, make sure your businesses are able to continue to operate and thrive.
All right. Again, thank you to all the panelists. I'm going to introduce Lori to close us out for today.